You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Get up on it. Hey, welcome back to 40 Fit Radio, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. That was actually pretty good, wasn't it?
That's pretty good. Get on up.
Get. It sounds like a, I don't know.
Are you stroking out on me?
So what happens when you get old, man? I'm over here having a coronary. Man, welcome to 2020. This is not our first episode in 2020. Hey, it's hot in here. Can you turn that heat down
warm.
for real?
Yeah.
Go turn the heat
All right.
down. Coach Trent's going to go turn the heat down, even though we're going to turn.
We're hot and live in here, and we got too hot.
Yeah, we're actually overly hot, hyperthermal active, thermogenic. There you go, hyperthermogenic. So we're going to talk about changing the narrative in 2020 today. I do not do New Year's resolutions. I do not change my path because of a new year. I do not alter my efforts because of a new year. I alter my efforts because I'm going in the wrong direction.
You don't resolve to do something. You are resolute.
That's right.
In your current actions.
Exactly. I mean, I try to use every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every biannual basis, every year to, continue to shoot for goals, continue to shoot for targets that we have in our lives. And that old saying, if you don't have a target to shoot for, you don't have anything to miss at, and you don't have anything to hit either. So that's our number one goal is to direct your efforts and to change the narrative in 2020. So we're going to talk about changing the narrative, what that really means, how to change the narrative, and how to take some steps towards a more accurate narrative. But before we do that, we're going to talk about, real quickly, fitness trends in the last 10 years. Some of the things, and there's a reason why we're talking about this today, but we're going to talk about hot fitness trends in the last 10 years. And I got this exciting little article here about the top 10, actually it's top 9 fitness trends in the last 10 years, but that were all the rage. Okay.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me guess one of them.
Yes.
CrossFit.
Well, absolutely. It's number one on the list, skyrocketed into popularity through 2010s and is still going strong today. So CrossFit, basically high-intensity interval training, weightlifting, gymnastics, and other exercise styles. And they rotate the workouts from day to day, constantly varied, high-intensity, functional movement, and basically to prepare you for the known and the unknowable. So I like high-intensity interval training. I like a lot of the aspects of CrossFit. I think there's some good in interval training and conditioning, in being able to do a little bit of everything, being a generalist. The one thing that CrossFit preaches is that they punish the specialist and reward the generalist. And that's generally true. And I like that. I think that that's the way humans should physically evolve over time and develop over time. I think we should be generalist unless we have a chosen sport or a chosen recreation where we're trying to specialize in that area. So I think that's cool.
Yeah,
and I think that's great.
And CrossFit is one of those things where, that was one of the first times I saw average Joes get out of the commercial box gym and go do something really hard at a CrossFit gym.
Yes.
And there's a big emphasis on hard, stressful training as being something that must be done to get improvement,
right?
As opposed to 8-minute abs or whatever.
Well, and I think CrossFit, CrossFit's probably the best fitness trend in the last 20 years in regard, or maybe longer, in regards to how it has impacted the general population's fitness. It really has. And it's brought Olympic lifting to the forefront. It's brought gymnastic skills, adult gymnastic skills back to a lot of people, endurance training, just traditional barbell lifting. I met Mark Ripito at a barbells seminar due to CrossFit. So, there's a lot of good in that community. I'm still a CrossFit Level 3 coach. I still use those types of workouts sometimes in my training and the training of others. But it's one of the bag of tricks in my skill set as a coach to be able to train people with. So, it's not all of who I am, and it's not who I am in some ways. So if that makes sense, it's part of my skill set, and I still use it. But so that's the first biggest one is CrossFit, and it's real popular. The other thing is obstacle races, like the Spartan races and all the different mud runs and
Tough
Mudders and all that stuff, and people actually training for nothing but a 5K mud run or a 10K mud run or a Spartan race or something like that, and there are actual coaches that do nothing that have classes around helping you develop all the skills that are required for mud runs or tough mud, Spartan races. That's another one. Running has also seen a huge resurgence, and specifically barefoot running, going back to more traditional running shoe styles, going back to barefoot running, going back to minimalist type shoes, which is amazing because about 10 years ago, I got my first pair of Altas, which is was an alternative zero drop, minimalist running shoe. I got my first pair of trail running Altas years ago through their website, through the Alta website. The guys, it's a father and son team out of Colorado, and they started this shoe company, minimalist shoe company. And I went to Luke's Locker in downtown Fort Worth to try to see if they had any other zero drop minimalist shoes. And they were like, "Oh no, we don't sell that. That's junk science." And then about 3 or 4 years later, that's all they're selling, or they're selling them, ad nauseum. New Balance came out with a zero drop. All these different companies came out with a zero drop shoe, meaning no high heel, no big cushiony heel, but basically just a minimalist shoe. So, but running has seen a huge resurgence in the last 10 years.
I'll confess, I did have for a few years some Vibram five fingers.
Yeah.
And I trained in them too.
Yeah, there you have it. People walk in with those and no socks and those shoes that look like feet with toes.
Oh man, they stink too.
Yeah.
Like you can't get around it.
My feet are too awkward. I could never get them to fit. So the other thing that's big is just kind of a combination of things like the boutique fitness industry where coaches and trainers combine, a bunch of different disciplines together. I'm not sure that's really new, but we saw a big resurgence in boutique fitness type models.
Yeah, I have to imagine online coaching has probably grown. I don't know if it has, but I have to imagine it has because with the growth of the internet and, there's now so many different tools you can use to manage programming for someone. You don't have to have a custom website or use spreadsheets anymore or send emails back and forth. So,
well, I think CrossFit had a lot to do with that because more and more people were using online fitness coaches and online nutrition coaches, and then that has expanded into the barbell industry and the powerlifting industry and other disciplines, running industry. I mean, we have a client who has a running blog, and she does programming, I think, online for her clients too. So, the other thing was exercise gaming or exergaming, which I just do not get that. Like everything from Wii to these different Xbox Connect, Will Fit You, Ring Fit, all these different apps and virtual reality things where you wear a headset and all that junk.
Do you remember on the original 8-bit Nintendo, the Nintendo Track and Field game?
Oh yeah,
and it had the little if could plug in.
Yeah,
and you had to if
you want to run real
on
fast
the sprint,
with your hands.
But I'd use my feet, but you had to really chop the ground. That was probably more intense than any of these Wii sports games that came out.
But the other thing that was kind of a trend or craze in 2010s was pole fitness. Pole fitness, and I'm looking at this picture of pole fitness stuff. Pole fitness has become increasingly mainstream and less stigmatized, they said. So, interesting. I wanted to talk to Michelle about that.
Yeah.
So, pole fitness. So we'll skip that one.
So, do you go to a private pole fitness coach? How does that work?
I guess. I don't know if I would want my wife going to a pole fitness coach unless she was a female, but that's kind of interesting. Yeah, next. So boxing-inspired workouts or fighting workouts like kickboxing or Taibo, or all the different boxing type fitness programs. There's one right now. I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's a boxing type fitness franchise out right now.
Right,
Cannot remember the name of it, but there's one out right now.
Yes, I've seen that. How about fighting sports in general, like recreational,
MMA and BJJ and Taekwondo and Jiu-Jitsu and karate, and all those have gotten more popular. Zumba has become a huge dance fitness craze. All the different dance fitness styles, and I'm a huge Zumba fan.
Oh yeah.
Spin classes or any type of cycling, like we've heard the recent controversial Peloton issues. All the Peloton problems.
Le Peloton.
So all the spin classes, and people go in there and mindlessly spin their legs off, and they still get off, and they still look skinny fat.
Yeah. So wait, all right.
What's up with that?
There is a controversy with the Peloton.
Oh, there's some type of media controversy with the Peloton that I can't remember. It's the woman who did the commercial with it, and it's so nonsensical, I don't even want to talk about it. It's stupid is what it is. All right, next. All right, so you got things like Soul Cycle and Peloton and all these other different things and spin classes, but those were the big trends. And I think we still got all the general fitness trends like yoga, and another one that you mentioned was bar, taking ballet dancing style things and doing it on a bar and all these different things.
So
now we have rowing franchises.
Yeah.
I'd see one called Row 2.
No, it's what do they call it? Crew.
No, there's these new franchises. It's called Row something. Something. But now you got a franchise where they're gonna use rowing. These are, folks, here's the deal. These are all fads.
Yeah.
FADS. Fads.
I'm reminded of a quote, "A fool and his money are soon parted."
That is very true. I will attest to that. I've been a fool in many money areas.
Me too. But yeah, so we've got a couple of positive trends here. We got people lifting barbells in CrossFit, doing something hard. Considering there's some element of programming in CrossFit. Now,
definitely.
I know that the individual CrossFit gyms have certainly taken the sort of HQ CrossFit model and evolved that quite a bit on their own. But
unfortunately, so. The HQ CrossFit model was more accurately targeted at the volume requirements for the general population to become fit. Now it's become like that every single gym is preparing you for the games.
Right. Yeah.
So, thrash them and trash them.
Yeah.
Broken, beaten, and scarred, Metallica.
But at least there's, they introduced the concept of doing something hard, doing something that is progressive in nature.
Yes.
Where you're building up to something. But it sounds like this last decade was kind of like every other decade before it.
Yeah.
Full of a bunch of fads.
Yeah, pretty much. And, there we go, human nature.
Yeah, and it's human nature, right? We don't want to do something hard. We don't really want to do things that challenge us. I think one thing about resolutions in the New Year's, that part of the reason they fail is because, and I think there's like studies on this too. I'm sure somebody can point me to one. But when you go out and you tell everyone about what you're going to do and your new goals that you've set, the new you, new year, new you, right? You get a little dopamine hit just from telling everybody about it, just from thinking about it.
Sure.
Oh man, in like a year, I'm going to be so jacked. I'm going to be so ripped.
I'm going to the games.
I'm going to be lean. I'm going to the games, right? And
I'm going to be in the 1,000
You get
club.
that little
You're not even in the 500 club.
tingly feeling from thinking about that.
It's exciting. It's exciting to think about the future.
That's right. It is exciting. And then 2 months later, when the grind hits, and you're out, you drop out, right? And I think part of that is that's the human nature part of all of these fads, is that they're appealing to that dopamine hit you get from thinking about the future you, and they're ignoring the grind, just the slow, steady progress.
How about this? If you want to be resolute to do anything in 2020, be resolute to do the hard.
Yeah.
Change, the funny thing about New Year's resolutions, and the funny thing about changing the path of the direction of your life in whatever compartment. Okay, so let's get this across the table. Humans are very compartmental, but yet a whole. They have all these different compartments of their existence, their life. It could be their physical body. It could be their mental state, their cognitive body. It could be their emotional body. It could be their social body, their social relationships. We can then also talk about other areas, their finances, the way that they earn their living, their culture, all these different things, all these different compartments. And in those compartments, we have a certain set of thoughts, and we have a certain narrative. When we talk about changing the narrative, by the way, I did not create the concept changing the narrative. I'm not saying I did. It's basically a very common concept within the psychology world. I'd love to have Dr. Pooter on here to talk specifically about the psychological concepts of changing the narrative. We must do that. But changing the narrative is really about changing the story that you have created in your own mind about a certain area in your life. It could be human relationships, social relationships. It could be the way you think about your body, the way you think about how others see your body. It could be the way you see your success in business. There's all these different areas of your life where you have a narrative. And the problem with us sometimes is that narrative is so far from the truth, so far from actual facts and reason and logic. And in our case, when we're talking about health or fitness, in our case, when we're talking about fitness, health, and lifestyle, so far away from science and anything that's actually true that it is the biggest stumbling block to us moving forward and changing our habits or changing the narrative or becoming the person we want to be in 2020 and in the future and beyond. And beyond. And so, it's just so far from the truth that we continue to spin like we're on a Peloton or we're on a spin bike and we're spinning as hard as we can, but we're just on the wrong bike or we're doing the wrong things. And so the number one thing that I want you to do, we want you to do in 2020 is to change this narrative that you have. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here. But, if you could do anything in changing the narrative, it is develop the singular habit of doing hard. Get it in your mind right now, 40 Fit Nation, that all the good stuff comes from struggle. It's, when I get clients in our gym and they're lifting barbells and they're kind of looking for the end of the road, I tell them there is no end of the road.
Add 5 pounds.
Exactly. Add 1 pound. Whatever it is. And there also might come a time in your training, we're talking about your physical training. There might come a time in your physical training where you're not getting stronger, but you're trying.
Right.
Where you've kind of reached not the pinnacle, but where you have gotten, we talk about this, how strong is strong enough.
Right.
Or where you've gotten your body to a level of performance and improvement to where it's, and I hate to use this term because it sounds so mediocre, but it's good enough. It's good enough. I've got several trainees right now, and so do you, Trent, in our gym here, who have really done some amazing things with their body over the last year in our gym.
Absolutely.
And they are way far down the road from where they were in a good direction by changing the narrative, changing the facts and the reason and the truths that they have in their mind. And to be honest with you, if they never get any fitter, they have done the amazing.
Yeah.
And they are way down that road.
Right.
And so, the problem with humans is we always want to better. We always want to better. And I'm down with that. I think that's great. But the reality might be that we talk about this. Where is the sweet spot in everything we do? I don't know where that is from one person to another, but I believe there's a sweet spot in human development in all these areas to where if you try to push the envelope, you just become miserable.
Yeah.
And if you don't push the envelope at all and you don't do anything on the other side of that, you're miserable. So there's that sweet spot. But, we want you guys to begin to change that narrative in your mind, change those sets of truths, those sets of facts. And the problem is that in our world today with the media, it's very, very difficult to do. Yeah. And when I say the media, I don't just mean the published, broadcasted, internet, academic world, whatever it is, wherever you're getting your information from, really is the media.
Mm-hmm.
It's mediums, information. And have you ever thought about that? What is a medium? A medium is someone who tries to tell the future and tell your past, and they give you a bunch of hocus pocus stuff, But man, if you're getting your fitness information from the media today, just stop doing it. There is nothing of good in general that is coming from the media today. I hate to say that.
How about this? Turn it all off. There's nothing that's going on in the world that you need to know about that you won't figure out on your own without the media. Like if it's important enough to move the world, you're going to hear about it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Turn it all off.
Yeah.
There's so much negative as we get further into this narrative. I mean, I think there's a lot of negative stuff because that's what sells.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
That's what sells in the media. Negative stories.
I've got a friend who, and I don't think she listens to our podcast, so I don't think it matters, but she's had trouble with relationships, and she's an older lady, and she is a vibrant, very extroverted, amazing person. She just doesn't realize how amazing person she is, and she's posted over the last year trouble with relationships and going in and out of Instagram, and mostly Instagram, and she posted just recently that she's so glad that The Bachelor restarted, because she loves to watch how all these people's lives are just so, it's just such a mess up to see people try to find, what they think they so badly need in relationships and they're looking for with this Bachelor thing, and I'm thinking, why are you watching that junk? It is definitely not feeding development and improvement in your sense of self and in your ability to cope and have good relationships.
That's right. And all of that stuff is scripted.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm sorry to tell you.
It's just junk.
I'm sorry to tell you. And you know what? Everything about that industry is scripted and planned.
Yeah. Well, and everything on the media is scripted. It's to tickle your ears. I hate to use a little bit of scripture on people today from the Bible, but we are broadcasting from the Bible Belt here in the South. But everybody has different belief system, and that's fine with me. But it tickles your ears. It's just enough information to where it makes you want more, and it makes you want to. And it's the same with fitness and health in the industry today. You see all these infomercials, you see all this stuff, and what it does is, if we're not careful, it builds who is it who said, if you want to change the facts or change a man's mind, change someone's mind, just keep telling it a lie over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Right.
And it becomes a lie, and then it becomes a partial truth, and then it becomes a half truth or whatever. And then before you know it, it becomes the way you think, your own truth.
That's right. Yeah, it's really interesting. I've been a part of 2 internet forums over, period of, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. One is a guitar related, kind of nerdy forum. And the other one is Reddit, right?
Yeah. Oh, what a cluster!
It's just a train wreck. It's one of those things. This is my guilty pleasure. It's a train wreck. You can't stop watching.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. The life cycle of ideas is so short. You see it right now.
Yeah.
It's something where it's like, if it's a political idea that's happening in the bigger media, right? There's so much noise and there's so much going on. There's so many current events that get mixed up with the basic ideas that these narratives, you may not even know they're shifting.
Right.
But when you see in a nerdy, gear related forum, let's say, you see an idea about a thing change. And I'll give you an example on Reddit. Fitness. 4 or 5 years ago, if you came to Reddit Fitness, you're like, hey, I don't have no idea what to do. I want to get fit. Everybody's going to say, hey, go do starting strength. Read the book, do starting strength.
Right.
And about, 2 years ago, everybody's like, oh, starting strength is garbage.
Yeah.
Ripito doesn't know. He hasn't trained any elite lifters before.
Right.
You shouldn't even be lifting anyway.
Right.
Or, it's just...
Lifting's bad for your joints.
Yeah, the narrative changed very quickly,
Right.
Like 180 degrees.
Well,
and this happens in the media all the time. And that's an example of what you're talking about. It's just a big echo chamber,
right. Ooh,
and
that's a good word.
And
I like that.
What is running at the bottom of all of this, including our narratives about ourselves,
You mean
is
like
bias.
the little ticker tape down at the bottom?
Yeah.
Do not read this. Do not listen to this. This is all junk. This is all inaccurate data.
the ticker tape in your life is that we all have cognitive biases.
Yeah.
We all are looking for
Lots of confirmation bias.
confirmation of
Yes.
what we already believe.
Right.
And
to
we seek that
further substantiate that the narrative that we have is truth. Let me give you a good example.
Yeah.
And I know this is going to be a weird example, but let's say you have a young lady that has, and this is a relationship thing, but she had very poor fathering, or there's a lack of a father figure in her life. And she never really had positive male relationships. But she's seeking that because that's the nature of children, the nature of both young ladies and men, both. I mean, we could use this. Let's just not make this about ladies. Let's make this about a young boy and a young girl, both.
Yeah.
They need that fathering relationship. They need that sense of unconditional love, that sense of
Secure.
father, protector,
Yeah.
provider, mentor, all those things. And they don't get that. Then they may go to seek that out in other relationships for the rest of their life, potentially, unless they change that narrative. And what we see happen sometimes with young ladies, specifically, is what I was saying, was that they will seek out a male role model or a male father figure, or they'll also have a lower sense of self,
Right.
and a lower sense of who they are,
Yes.
and a poor sense of self-confidence. And so they'll go to seek out men that are less than able to, well, first of all, those men can never meet that need. But they seek out relationships where they choose losers. You know, and I always told I raised 3 daughters, guys, so I do know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
Over the 30 years of marriage that I've had. And what I've found is that dads, you are the key. Moms are key too, but dads, you are the key. And so this is a great example of you'll find this girl who becomes an adolescent young lady, and then she becomes a woman, and she has failure after failure after failure of relationships. Number one, she has a poor selection process. She chooses losers, guys who don't treat her well. Why? Because she doesn't feel valued to be treated well. She doesn't feel like she deserves to be treated well.
Yeah.
But that's a perfect example of a messed up narrative in her mind, you know, that she's got these sets of truths about how she thinks about herself and human and others, and it just messes up. It's a constant snowballing effect. Now, if we take that same concept in the psychological world and roll that into fitness and health, when we talk about how you perceive what you're going to, here's our number one goal, folks. Our number one goal at 40 Fit, my number one goal in starting 40 Fit, period. This is it. It wasn't to get rich off of it, which if it was, I would have closed shop a long time ago because I haven't made any money doing it. So, but it wasn't to do those things. It's basically to do this. It is to change your mind, to change your narrative. Yes, I want to brainwash you. I want to give you the facts based on how I see those facts. And not only myself, but Coach Trent and content experts that we bring on and reading that we do. And let me tell you, we're really careful about what we present here on our podcast. We're very careful about presenting something that we can't say with reasonable doubt that it is accurate, logical, reason-based, and science-based.
That's right.
And there are some things that we change our mindset over time.
Right.
But the number one thing here is that my goal is that you can change your narrative in the way you think about what you should be doing to be fit and healthy.
That's right.
That you change your mindset. That if you walk into a boutique fitness shop and that trainer tells you, oh yeah, well, you don't need to do strength training. You just, man, we need to cardio, man. Endurance is what's important. Your endurance and flexibility as you age are the number two things that you should be working on and focusing on. That's wrong. that is not science-based, and it's definitely not based on facts.
Right. So I think part of the trap that people get caught in is when you don't have expertise in an area, and you're not going to in every area. We all have to rely on other experts, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem.
I don't know anything about internet networking.
Right.
I'm going to have to hire an expert to do that, right? And at some level, I have to be okay with using the knowledge of others, but I also have to have a way of evaluating that person.
Right.
We talked about this a few episodes ago when we said good doctors giving bad advice.
Right, sure.
You've got your own back at the end of the day, right? And you've got to have some way of evaluating what people are telling you. And I think that's really just comes down to critical thinking. And so I think a lot of people get stuck in not having any sort of basis for thinking about fitness, right? And so they're susceptible to whatever trend is popular. And along with that, they have this set of biases. They think, probably for no good reason, that flexibility is the key, or cardiovascular endurance is the key, or maybe strength is the key. Everyone has a different bias, and they're going to seek out the people that telling them what they want to hear.
And then it confirms that bias.
That's right. The unless part is unless they have some sort of fundamental knowledge that's built from first principles, and they have a base that they can then think about the world.
Right.
And that's the key here. We're not saying we're all right here at 40 Fit.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
And I guarantee you, in a year, we'll probably have an episode where we're like, yeah, you know what? We've kind of changed our thinking about that.
We're a little off.
But what we do have is a way of thinking about fitness that starts from the ground up. We start from first principles, and we build up from there. We look at the science, and we evaluate what we think. And we change that as necessary.
Right.
But and we're not going to be 100% right because every model has error in it. But at least we have a model.
Right.
And we've got a way of evaluating new information that comes in and filtering that. And that's ultimately what you have to develop to change your narrative is you have to have a sense of self-worth and have a model that helps you evaluate all this different stuff that's coming in. Don't just believe us just because.
Well, I love that, Trent. I love that concept of first principles, just foundational first principles. In other words, we want to develop your mind in the 40 Fit Nation. We want to develop your mind to a level where you're not being brainwashed by us. You are brainwashing yourself. In other words, we want to develop your didactic reasoning skills. You see, here's the deal, folks. The difference between a professional and a technician is that a technician knows what to do, but they don't know why. A professional should know not only what to do, but why they do it, the rationale behind why they do something. And that is built on a foundation of hundreds of thousands of hours of reading, experimentation, experience, observation. We then go into the scientific method, basically.
Right. Yeah.
We talk about this concept of the scientific method. And so the beauty behind the scientific method is that when we follow it and when we have these foundational principles, then we're less likely to be influenced by confirmation bias or extraneous and in what we call extraneous, external or internal validity issues. These are science statistics terminology.
Right.
But that's our goal, is to be as accurate as possible. We know we're not 100% accurate all the time, but we're trying to be as accurate as possible so that your path, my path, Trent's path, all of our clients' paths are as accurate as possible and as, I guess you would say, that we veer away from the path as little as possible, and that our time is well spent, and that our resources and our money and everything else that our effort, our hard effort that we're putting into our fitness and our health, that it's put into the right direction. And that's the number one thing you need to do to change the narrative.
Yeah. So let's think about it right now. Check your biases. We've all got them, me included.
Yeah, I got a bunch.
Right? But check your biases. Sit down for a few minutes today and think about the things that you believe about health and fitness. And
don't go to Google to do it.
That's right. No, don't go to Google. Just
internally search.
Yeah, maybe write them down. What do you think is...
how about this? What are the top 5 to 10 things that someone over 40 should be doing as the foundational principles to build a quality fitness and health lifestyle? What are the top 10? And not what we think.
Right.
What
right.
do you think?
What do you think? Right.
Right. Are
And
the
then-
top 10 things.
And then here's the key. Just ask yourself why. Can you just come up with
What are
one
the
solid
facts?
reason why? Number one,
Yeah.
I believe that cardiovascular endurance is the key to health. Let's say that's
is
one
the
of them.
is
a foundational
foundational principle
part
Right.
of health. Okay,
Okay, cool.
fine. Why?
Back that up.
Give me.
That's a hypothesis.
Yeah.
Now you have to test that hypothesis.
That's right, exactly. And so, the whole point is just to take a moment to take stock of what you think and start to tear down assumptions, right? So I have a client, I work with You Need a Budget. It's a really cool company run by a guy named Jesse Meekum. He does financial planning. He has a financial planning software model, right? And he does this little podcast about 5 to 10 minutes every week that I produce. And he calls the first podcast in January is called the January Burn Down. And this is a process he does with his budget every single year. He sits down with his family and they just go through the budget line by line. And this is supposed to be a fun session. It's not a hardcore planning session. And all he does is he says, they try to question everything. They're like, okay, so we know we've got 2 cars. I know we need a set of tires in March probably. So we need to, have a few $100 set aside for that. Hey, do we need a car? What if we just got rid of our cars? Like, could we bike to work?
Sure.
Could I bike to the grocery store? The point is
Challenging assumptions.
challenging the things that he just already don't just go into the next year.
Norms and assumptions.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so you can spend some time just kind of thinking about this and have fun with it, right? But then question yourself, do I have a solid reason why I do the things that I do? Otherwise, if you don't do this, you're letting other people think for you.
Right.
And guess what?
Which is commonplace.
Other people want to make money off of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's great example of the media. I mean, I think one really good example, I have to talk about this guy because I just think he's done something that, and I'm not even a client of his. I'm not a customer of his, even though I'm close friends with him and I believe in what he's doing. Maybe one day I'll break down and join, but Online Great Books is a great example.
Yeah. Yeah.
What Scott Hambrick has done with Online Great Books and Carl Shute, is assisting him with that.
I just started it, by the way, with my wife.
Very cool.
We just signed up
Very
a
cool.
few weeks ago. Yeah.
Very cool. So that's a great example. What Scott is trying, and I hate to put words in Scott's mouth. We ought to interview Scott, by the way.
Yes. Yeah.
But what Scott is trying to do with Online Great Books, correct me if I'm wrong, Trent, is give people access to the great Western works of literature so that they can build a mindset that is more accurately based on reality and more and shaped by those great writers and shaped by some of their core founding principles, like you said, first principles.
Right.
Another great example of this would be, hey, if you want to get the best produce in the world, if you want to get the best vegetables and fruits, and go get the heirloom seeds.
Right.
Go back to the original seeds that were totally untouched by man,
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's what Scott's trying to do with that, is to give people a different mindset about the world around them and how to think about the world around them, because as a man thinketh, so he is.
Right.
And so as you think about, as a woman thinketh, so she is. But as you think about these concepts, it shapes the way you see the world around you. And that's true in every aspect of our life. I think one of the key success principles in life is not just doing, but it is the way you think.
That's right.
First of all, the way you think about your business life, your marriage life, your raising your kids, your fitness, your health, everything, relationships. The way you think is going to shape everything. And so our goal is to help you have these foundational principles. And I can just tell you right up front, if you were to ask me today, what is the most important scientifically based principle for health and fitness, longevity, and quality of life, I would say it's one thing and one thing alone to start with, and that is get strong.
Yes.
Get strong. Now, I'm not talking about powerlifting strong. I'm saying get reasonably strong. Now, that doesn't mean that things like nutrition aren't important. Nutrition's extremely important because it fuels that development. It provides, who is it? What is it? Was it not Socrates, but who said,
I think Hippocrates.
Yeah,
right?
what did he say? Let food be thy medicine.
And medicine be thy food. Yeah.
I mean, and that's beautiful. I mean, it's perfect. It's a truth. That is a truth.
Yeah.
Food in itself can be your medicine. It's preventative. It provides all of the natural ingredients that we need to create that strength. But the number one thing you should be doing, so check your mind's eye, check your narrative on those 10 things that you've written down, and do you have the most important thing on your list as getting stronger? Because it is the most important thing. And we could argue that point scientifically, but that's what we've come to believe.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why we started this whole podcast with a series of foundational episodes. We didn't just go straight into the nitty-gritty. We started with like, hey, what is fitness?
Right.
How do you
exactly.
get it? Right? Would you train for this or that? Right? And why? And I think that's a good part of this thinking process. What you just identified is there are multiple important things about health and fitness, but there's a priority too that's important. And we've seen lots of people who try to diet their way or eat their way into good health, and I'm sorry, it's not going to work. If you eat that you crush that New York slice or 3 or 4 of them, right? You can't run that off.
Right.
You can't run off a bad diet. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. Right. So nutrition is very important, but the training has to come first.
Right.
That's the priority. Right. Without the training, the nutrition is kind of whatever.
Well,
right?
I would propose that, if you're out there strength training and you're just crushing it in your training, you could be eating junk, a lot of high calorie, dense calorie, processed food, and your body's a pretty good machine at using what it needs and throwing the rest away. It's not to say that you're not ingesting chemicals that you shouldn't and so forth and so on, but
certainly
you're maximizing your genetics through your stressors that you're providing your body. And that goes a long way to fight off a bunch of woes, basically.
That's right. Yeah, you're certainly far, far further ahead than the person who's not doing anything.
Correct.
But the point here is that there may be several important things on your list, right? Some may not hold up to scrutiny, some may, right? You may determine that for you, mobility is going to be an important piece of your fitness, but it's not the priority. And you've got to start to put this stuff into a priority. And that's what we tried to help you do at the beginning of this podcast in the first, few episodes.
Go back and listen to those. That's a great start to the new year.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to the first 10 episodes.
Listen to the foundations.
Yeah.
The foundations of fitness.
Exactly. The first 10 episodes just talk a lot about how to change, how to think, and we don't want to brainwash you guys. I mean, I said that earlier in the podcast. What we really want to do is teach you to think like a scientist in some of these areas. Teach you to think reasonably and logically in some of these areas. You know?
And I think you'll find in any good professional group that there's always active talk about whatever we all have a common model that we share about health and fitness, but we're always debating it.
Yes,
and that's I think that's so great and so healthy, right?
It's healthy
right now. As we speak on the Barbell Logic Slack channel, all the coaches are debating. They're like the nature of hip drive and knee extension in the squat. Right, we have this narrative about what a proper squat is and why, and we've got lots of well-reasoned points about supporting our arguments. But now we're starting to break that down and say, like, well, maybe are we really right about that? We always say this, but maybe that's not quite right.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that kind of thought process is healthy. And some of these coaches have been doing this for 10, 15, 20 plus years.
Right.
And so
I think we all develop a certain sets of confirmation bias. Even the logical and the reasoned individual who's more analytical develops a certain set of confirmation biases. And the more I've become aware of this in my own mind's eye, I challenge my own mind's eye, how I think about things. I think we have to challenge our own set of biases in our mind. And since, I've always been fairly analytical, just the way I think. I've always been kind of a science guy. That's just kind of my wheelhouse. But I notice with my patient population, I've really become hyper aware of it, more aware of it lately than I have in a long time. How many people, and it is overwhelmingly the large majority, I would say 8 out of 10 patients that walk into my practice think incorrectly about some major health and fitness precept or concept that is holding them back. You know, it's amazing to me how many people they get this bias and they get this thought process, this narrative in their mind, and all of a sudden that becomes fact. And then they let you know about that. And immediately when I hear that information, I filter that. What a lot of people don't realize is the way that we think, the reason why we think the way we do is because when that information comes into my mind, it goes through a set of filters.
Right.
And those filters are hundreds and thousands of hours of reading text, reading academic text, reading research articles, experiential evidence, observational evidence over the last 30 years of what works.
Right.
Plain and simple, what works. And so I'll hear those things from my patients, and it goes through my ear, my filtering system. And immediately I'm like, bing, 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 bing. That is not fact. That is not true. Now, how can I shape then this person's mindset? Because my goal is I'm trying to get them to have a readiness to change. I'm trying to get them to change their thinking so that they'll change their output. Change the input to change the output. And that's what we've got to do. That's why we want to get you thinking. We want to get you thinking on your feet. We also want to hear from you. We want to know when you think that something we're saying is wrong.
Yes, please.
Or it's okay to challenge us and say, why do you guys think this? Why do you guys think that? And then what that does is that further refines really what we think, because we have to then support it. We have to substantiate it. That's how communities really, really grow.
That's right.
When people are able to have discussions and discourse and disagreements and still remain as a community. That's the key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, we want to hear about that because I guarantee you, I've said something wrong in this podcast.
Oh,
I know I have. I have. I don't know what it is
today,
but I know I have said something wrong.
Yeah,
right?
Me too.
Probably multiple things. And so, but that's right. I think it starts with being aware of your biases, being aware that being open to change over time,
right?
But having a filter so that you're not at the whim of every new, whatever which way the wind blows today in the fitness world and then, whatever parts of the world.
Right. When we're talking about your fitness and health, the first thing is change those foundational principles. Challenge those foundational principles. I love what Trent said about write down some of the thoughts that you have, the biases. You can call them biases. They're your thoughts. Write down those thoughts. The way you think about systems and the world around you and organization. Write down maybe 10 principles or foundational things that you think to be so true about what will create your health and fitness into the year 2020. What will improve it? What's the most important thing? Number one. What's the second thing on the hierarchical list? What's the third thing, the fourth thing, the fifth thing? And just in order of importance, list those things.
That's right. Give them a priority. Yeah.
Then begin to challenge those things. Seek out data and challenge those things. I honestly believe that this podcast is an accurate, I won't say it's 100% accurate, it is an accurate source for you to go to find information. If it's not in one of our podcasts, and they're all titled appropriately so that you could go to one or another, then send us a question.
That's right. Yeah.
We're going to do a Q&A coming up soon. Send us a question. Let us know. Go to Barbell Logic's podcast. It's an excellent podcast to find good information about fitness and health.
Absolutely.
Go to Starting Strengths podcast. Good information about fitness and health. Go to all these different avenues. And there's a bunch more out there. Some are more accurate than others. What tends to happen is they begin to become more leaning towards one area. They begin to fall outside the bell curve and go to the extremes.
Right.
And so you want to find one that's real well balanced.
Yeah.
But do that this year. Challenge the way you think about your narrative, and then begin to set steps and actions in place to begin to change the narrative in your mindset. Develop accountability. Find someone who has the skills, has the traits, has the success that you want in an area of your life, and begin to befriend them, mentor with them, be accountable to them,
right?
So that you can grow in that area.
All right, folks. Well, there you go. That's your homework for 2020 is to write down those 10 things about your health and fitness, give them a priority, start to challenge them, and then reach out to us. If you got a question about it, if you want to challenge us, please do that. You can always send emails to info@40fit.com. Leave us a comment on Instagram @40fitradio. On Facebook, you can find us at the 40Fit Nation. As always, we have some good discussions that have been happening recently in 40Fit Nation. People talking about their programming,
I need to be
asking
better
questions.
about that. I'm so bad about the interwebs. I need to get better
I'm
at that.
carrying
Trent's
carrying the ship here.
Yeah.
But yeah, so drop us a note there. Any one of those places, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, good luck with your training and fitness. We will see you next week.
See you later.